Hi everyone! So today we are going to be talking all about fonts. This week you're going to start working on the first slide of your slideshow, your portfolio slideshow, and part of that is going to be choosing a font to represent you as a photographer. Fonts are an incredibly powerful way to communicate, so let's take a look at the different types. Okay, so some of the basic types, and there are more categories than this, but I'm just going to start with the very basics. We have serif, sans serif, script, and novelty fonts. So first off, let's talk about serif. Serif literally means these little lines at the ends of the letters. That is what a serif is, and so a serif font has serifs on it. This makes it easier to read long passages of text and is often used for books. So open up a book and start scrolling, or not scrolling, start flipping through, you're going to see that they've used a serif font. And this usually has a more traditional look, partially because it's been used in books for so long. Now, sans serif means that it doesn't have the little things at the end. So you can see that they end bluntly instead of having serifs. And these fonts are easier to read on computer screens and are also associated with being more modern. So scripts are like handwriting fonts. And the thing with script is that, they're really cool to look at and everything, but they're best used for short passages of text, not for long passages. As you can see here, it's kind of hard to read all of this compared to the prior two, right? So you want to use these sparingly for, maybe part of a logo, or, for your slide, maybe for your name. That would be fine. But if you had any kind of explanation text going on, you don't want to be using script. Now, novelty fonts are super fun, but people often fall into a trap of using novelty fonts for really important things, and I'm going to tell you when to use them and when not to use them. So there's no real rules like, the other ones were like handwriting or serif and sans serif. These are just like some really fun fonts that people are coming up with. But the thing is that they come and go, and so what feels and looks interesting right now is going to look outdated in a couple years. So they're good for things like an event, a short-term type of thing. You're having an event, a one-time event, you can use a font that's trending at the moment and no problem. But for longer branding, you definitely don't want to use a novelty font. A classic example is Papyrus. So this last bit of here is all Papyrus font. And Papyrus gets made fun of quite a bit. It was one of the first novelty fonts that ever came out. I believe it was the late 90s. And so it was used for so many things, and it pops up still. And it has this kind of like old Egyptian, that's what it's supposed to be type of look. But it is very outdated looking when people use it now, unless you're using it ironically. That's a whole different thing. Okay, so as you can see, there are practical reasons to use or not use some types of fonts. Now, let's take a look at these famous logos here. And we're going to start seeing that these logos are all using fonts that kind of follow these rules. So first we have Adidas, Avant-Garde, so this is a sans serif font, so it looks more modern. Now, when we have rounded sans serif, that usually has a friendlier feel. So we're going to see a couple different social media sites that use a rounded type of sans serif. Okay, Helvetica is a classic typeface. It was created to be neutral, as in not having emotion, and it's used a lot for things that need to be really clear cut. For example, the national parks, Helvetica is their logo that they use for all of their signage, stuff like that. So things that are clear cut usually use Helvetica. You're going to see that Helvetica used all the time. It's one of my favorite fonts. It's straightforward. I don't know. So North Face, we have Helvetica. And once again, we have Helvetica. This time it's in italics, but still. And you can also see that it is sans serif, so it's looking more modern. All right, Stranger Things. So this is a serif font, but it works perfectly because this show is set in the 1980s. So it's supposed to look older, right? We don't want it to look modern. So they purposely chose a serif font for this. All right, here's another serif. And they want to be traditional, right? Since 1761. I believe this is an art supply company. So they want to tell you that, hey, they've been around forever. They've been the trusted source for artist materials since 1761, so they can still be trusted. So they went with the serif font to have that more traditional, older look. Okay, eBay, sans serif, sans serif, another sans serif, and actually, and avant-garde. Wasn't that? Ah, that was the Adidas typeface too. Kind of interesting. Now this one is, excuse me, looks like it's a little bit of a heavier stroke, or maybe a bold version of the font. All right, so this one's interesting. Zara is a clothing brand that's supposed to be very avant-garde type of clothing. They've been around since the 70s, so they do have this serif font to kind of show that they're established, but they've moved the letters in. And this is a very non-traditional type of look, and it almost creates like its own little shape in a way. So this is a really clever use to use a font that feels traditional, but in a way where it feels a little bit more modern and avant-garde, which is exactly what they want their clothing line to be like. Okay, another sans, another sans. Okay, and here's one of those rounded sans serif like the Twitter. Ah, another Helvetica. Gotham for the Discovery Channel. Now this is interesting because we have Toy Story, which is Gill Sans. Now it's not just the font, right? It's also the colors. We have a stroke around each of the letters. This area back here. Now Gill Sans was also used, where was it? For Tommy Hilfiger. But you can see that there is way more spacing between each letter. It has a thinner stroke to it. So it's the same font, but used a little bit differently. It can have a very different type of look, but it still has that more modern type of look. Another sans, another rounded sans, in this case Arial. Oh, and Gotham for TikTok. Now Gotham was used, here for the Discovery Channel. Again, this one has a thinner stroke than that one. So it has a thicker look. They've also changed the T's. So this is something that's common in logo design, is that you might start with a font, but you play with a lot of it. You move the letters around, closer together, further apart, and you might change a little piece to make it unique to the brand. So in this case, they changed the end of the T to be a slant instead of straight. Another Futura. And what? Helvetica again. So this is another example where they went with a black or maybe clear interior, and then, well, no, black, it's classic black, and then a yellow outline, and then they changed it up, you know, by changing the S's and such and connecting them, giving them longer areas, same with the R. So doing this very simple things makes it their own. Right, a script font. I believe this is the first script font we've seen on this list so far, right? Another Futura. Eagle. Another Futura. Wow, quite a bit of Futuras. Here's another serif font. So Game of Thrones is set in the past. You want it to look old. You want it to look traditional. Use Trajan Pro. And another one. You want it to be traditional. We have that right here. All right, so let's get back. So let's talk about the psychology of fonts a little bit. Some fonts do make us feel or think differently. So this is a great way to think about when you're looking for a font to use for your first slide. What do you want to communicate about yourself and about your photography? So we have stuff such as tradition, respectable, reliable, comfort, and if you notice, these are all serifs. Stability, objective, clean, modern, sans serif. And it's interesting with the script how, you know, we have some that are elegant, affectionate, but then this one feels more fun and they have creativity down for it. So where if you wrote creativity with Bickham script, it probably wouldn't feel as, you know, creative as this handwritten look right here, but this works perfectly for elegance. Some more modern looks. And here we have that rounded look. Now in this case this is a serif, but it still feels friendly. We saw with those social media ones, social media fonts, that they have that rounded look to feel friendly. Okay, so now that you've gotten a bit of an introduction to font psychology, there's a few things I want you guys to do. So first, I want you to go ahead and when this video is done, click on this link here, and I want you guys to go read this article about font psychology by Canva. It's actually a really great article that's going to give you more insight and even more examples to try to figure out where you want to go with your font choices. After that, I've included this chart here. And again, to help you figure out what type of font you want to use for your first slide. So we have font moods, and this goes into, you know, basically that chart that I showed you a second ago, even into more detail. So you'll be able to look through all of these, read the descriptors over here, and think, is that what describes my photography? So you can try to kind of pin down at least what type of font that you want to start looking for your own photography brand. And as always, we have study guide questions all the way at the bottom here, so that you guys can do great on the midterm. All right, guys, so I'm really excited for you guys to start working on your final portfolio this week by starting on this very first slide. And you know, you might do the slide, you might decide that that's not exactly what you want to go for after you're done. You can change it later, but this is a great way to start practicing this and start thinking more deeply about what your photography actually represents.